to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about some more game mechanics that will be in Woo. Probably won't be there straight away at release, because release we're talking about having exhibition mode really. But once rewards are implemented, the wrestler exhaustion and injuries are going to be implemented as well, as a way to combat people being able just to exploit rewards or botting as well on there, because you'll be able to have limited use on your wrestlers, otherwise you risk exhaustion or injuries on there. And today I'll unpack a little bit on that and how that's going to work. Booker did share some stuff in the Discord earlier in the week, but he did keep some of the numbers out there, so I do have permission to talk about what's in there just now. As usual with these things prior to release, they're not locked in indefinite at this stage, but it's a good indication of where we might land once it is implemented into the game as well. So let's get to it. So here's how the mechanics are going to work. Essentially, your wrestler, the more that you use them, will have varying levels of exhaustion. So I suppose that's one sort of mechanic on its own. And as your exhaustion increases, then that's going to increase the chance of your injury. And then within injury, there's two variations on there as well, minor or critical injury, which we'll unpack a little bit. And then talking about the recovery as well. So when you want to get your wrestler back in the ring and they're injured, or what's that going to look like, or if they're at a level of exhaustion that you don't feel comfortable using them because you're scared about the risk of injury, then again, how long you're going to have to wait on that. And at the end of the video, what I'll probably do as well is just give an idea of what I think I might do with my own wrestlers. Am I going to push my luck a little bit, see if they do get injured, or am I actually going to maybe manage them to a certain level and only use them a certain amount of times a day or within like a 24 or 48 hour period. So I'll get to that in a sec as well, but let's first of all talk about exhaustion. So each NFT can compete in 10 matches before they're exhausted, at which point they can't be used for 48 hours. So exhaustion's broken down into two parts, which is relaxed and stressed, which we'll talk about in a sec. And depending on how exhausted your NFT is, then it may become injured. And your NFTs also have a recovery rate, which we'll talk about as well. So relaxed state is when your NFT is relaxed and there's a 1% chance per match that your wrestler may become injured. So I suppose understanding that from what I'm getting there is, even if you're using the wrestler for maybe the first or second time, there's still that real slight chance of RNG hitting and you're getting an injury on there. And then when you move from being relaxed into stressed, then at that point you're looking at a 10% chance per match that your NFT may become injured. So the more you push that, the more you roll that dice, I suppose, and run the risk of getting that injury on there. If you are enjoying this video, then please give us a like and subscribe to the channel so that you can say
You just made the list!
And don't forget as well to leave some comments as well if you have any questions about anything that's mentioned in here, or if you've got any ideas for any future content or just general feedback for myself as well. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to leave a comment. So next, let's talk about injuries. So there's two types of injury, both minor and critical. So depending on the type of injury that you get will determine on how long it takes for your NFT to recover and how long it will be out of action for. So as you can see, there's a 99% chance that any injury will be a minor injury on there, and a 1% chance that you'll get a critical injury. And you'll notice as well there's quite a drastic difference between the times to heal on there. So with both, you can either essentially pay upfront to heal your talent. I think that's going to be in Woo that you pay to heal that, or alternatively you can delegate them to the hospital. Now for minor injuries it's going to take 2 to 4 days plus the delegation cooldown. And for critical injuries, it's going to take 4 to 9 days plus the delegation cooldown. So you can see double there, quite a bit of difference in that. And as it says here, and what Booker's wrote certainly in the chat, is that if you choose not to send your talent to a hospital, then they won't start passively healing. So essentially your options are go to the hospital, passively heal over time on there, at which point you can pay to speed that up, or I suppose finish it off if you're in desperate need of that card. Or your alternative option is not to go to the hospital at all and just pay flat out to heal the talent on there. So last up in terms of the mechanics, we'll need to talk about recovery. So your wrestlers have a decay rate for exhaustion, or a recovery rate really, essentially 1 level per 4 hours. So where it mentioned above about the 10 matches in 48 hours, if you think of that as a bar of like 0 to 10, then every 4 hours one will come off at that one point, certainly will come off as well. What it has said as well is that managers will have a slower decay rate as they're not pro athletes. So managers' decay rate for exhaustion is 1 level per 6 hours on there. So you can see you're going to be need to try and find the balance. Like, are you the type of player who can play all the time, at which point you could feasibly go in every sort of 4 or 8 hours or whatever and have a couple of games with each NFT that you own, and then let it cool down so that you're never really pushing into that stressed section and really only sitting in the relaxed section, reducing your chance of getting an injury on there. Or whether, probably more like me, or you kind of stand-up person, maybe working 9 to 5, you might have to have periods that you can bulk play or kind of really cram in as much matches as possible, whether that be at night or at work or whatever it is. So then you might need to think a bit differently about how you manage that. For me personally, I'm hoping that my roster is deep enough that I can do, kind of keep them in that sort of maybe 1 to 4 matches each day, and just allow it to cool down overnight as well, or whilst I'm at work. And hoping that my roster, I suppose, is deep enough to do that. And then also getting tactical when, if you maybe think you've got the main event locked down and you've got one of the undercard matches locked down, do you then potentially put in single copies of a card that you don't really intend to use that often, so that you can essentially burn for that match 2 matches on the card, just to allow your other ones to last that little bit longer and hopefully bring you some wins home. But again, it's the dice of that. Who do you potentially come up against? Have they rented something that's strong, or have they got a strong deck that you weren't aware of, etc. So it's going to be really interesting to watch that play out on there. And then the last thing that Booker's mentioned on here as well is that they're going to be implementing some consumables to deal with fatigue and injuries. There'll be packs that you can purchase with only Woo, and inside those packs, essentially, I suppose it will be similar to opening a card pack, where there'll be random drops. So there might be certain items that provide a slight help on the fatigue, some that provide a large help on it, or similar for injuries. So it might be a bit of luck in terms of what you get in those packs, and whether the packs are going to be single drop or is there going to be multiple things in there as well. So we don't really have that detail yet, but rest assured when we do, I'll go through that and talk about what my thoughts are and that. And the other interesting thing I suppose Booker mentioned is the thought of when territory wars and I suppose guild wars, or as they'd traditionally be known, there might be guilds then kind of racking up those consumables so they can really go hard and make sure that they can take home the win on there as well. And the last little thing I suppose to mention as well is that we've talked about a new building for land that, when upgraded, will actually produce some of those consumables as well. So not only would you then have to look at buying packs, you might be able to, if you've got a lot of land, actually have enough consumables to really cover your daily play and not so much run the risk of injury as well, depending on how much land you've got and what your wrestler NFT size is as well, in terms of how many you've got on there. So that pretty much wraps up the video for today, so hope you've enjoyed, and as always, thanks for staying to the end.
Have a nice day.